Welcome to the Dad Edge Podcast. I'm Larry Hagner, your host and founder of this show. I'm excited. Today, I'm a fanboy of today's guest, and that is best-selling author and also chief hostage negotiator for the FBI. Chris Voss has written the book, Never Split the Difference, Negotiate as if your life depended on it. You're probably scratching your head being like, Larry, why do you have the former chief hostage negotiator of the FBI on your podcast? What does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with being a father and a husband? If you're a human being, trust me, you will enjoy today's show because it's not just about negotiation. It's literally a crash course in communication and the psychology of communication. And as my guest he has coined the term, when you negotiate properly, you allow the other side to have your way. So when you're dealing with kids that are wanting to fight you at every pass, if you're trying to empathize with your wife, communicate with her on a more elite level, if you're trying to even communicate better within the workplace, this podcast is for you, I promise. I have read Chris's book probably, I think, 18 times. I've listened to the audiobook probably 12 times. I've read his book like 6 times. I don't know. I lost count. I keep reading his book over and over. I actually joined the app masterclass just because I wanted to hear Chris's lessons. I probably have watched that about 5 times already. I love everything that this man does. So Chris, he actually got his start on the Kansas City SWAT team. He injured his knee and had to start a new career path. His application to become a negotiator was rejected at first in his younger years, but he was determined to get the job no matter what. He began his training and acquired most of his experience working on a suicide hotline. He definitely says that gave him the in-depth crash course on emotional intelligence. He learned how to deal with people who were irrational and keeping himself from getting emotionally engaged. He ended up becoming the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI and has worked over 150 international incidents. Yeah, this guy's got some experience. So today, what I did is I took Chris through a lot of the lessons that he teaches and what it means to us as husbands, what it means to us as fathers. So you're going to hear why when we ask a question, we want to get the other side. Talking about our wives being the other side of kids. You actually want the other side to say no instead of yes. Everybody always wants people to say yes. You actually want people to say no. And he shares why, from a psychology standpoint, why. He's also going to talk to us about tactical empathy, where people feel most connected to us and most comfortable talking to us. So you're going to hear about tactical empathy. You're also going to hear why we want other people to never say, "You're right." Does this sound familiar? Your kids be like, "You're right, Dad. You're right." You actually want people to say, "That's right," when you're talking with them. That's right, not "you're right." You're also going to learn about 3 yeses. So you'll learn about that as well. And you'll also learn literally what happens to brain chemistry when you are communicating with people on a high level and what's actually firing in their mind. So, gentlemen, Chris's work has literally changed my entire life and has changed many of the guys in our community and our mastermind, their lives. What he teaches, it's not manipulation. What he teaches is how to communicate effectively and gives us a real skill set to do that. So today, I'm going to listen to this show over and over myself, not to hear me, but to hear him. All right, gentlemen, no more talk from me. Here's my interview with, this guy is the man, the myth, the legend, the former chief hostage negotiator for the FBI, Mr. Chris Voss. Chris Voss, I asked you if you had any objections or anything preventing you from coming back on the show, and you said no. So is that what got you back?
Why? How? What? Holy cow. That's how you got me back on. You asked me a no-oriented question. You're brilliant.
Oh, man. Hey, as we were chatting right before we got started here, you've changed my life, man. I'm raising 4 boys, 14, 12, 6, and 4. I lead a mastermind community full of dads and fathers. Today, as we record, this is actually the 5th year anniversary of the Dad Edge podcast.
Wow. Congratulations.
And dude, thank you. But you have literally changed the game of every interaction that I have with people. And my wife, tactical empathy, I swear, has just like elevated our relationship in so many different ways. So I know your expertise obviously is business and relationships, but on a personal level, these skills, man, I've read your book probably 12 times. I've listened to it probably another 12 times. I joined Masterclass just so I could, hear the lessons over and over again on a more video level. It has changed everything. So thank you.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. That is really gratifying to hear. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Oh, you bet. I want to get started here just in case the men had not heard your first interview from a couple of years back. But just remind everybody, I'm always so curious. I don't even think I asked you this on the first show, which is I'm always so curious, since this is a dad show, what was the relationship with you and your father, or you and your parents and your childhood like growing up?
Yeah, well, my dad, tough, hard-nosed, hard-working, high-integrity guy. And so not long on a lot of words. But very, very grew up in a can-do, figure-it-out environment. I mean, like literally, he handed me and my older sister, my sister Kathy, about a year and a half, just short of 2 years older than me. He decided he wanted a new garage in the backyard. And I'm like 11 years old, and she's 13. He hands us crowbars and says, "Go tear down the garage." And so, figure it out. My whole life, my father's approach to life was he had to figure stuff out, work hard, roll up your sleeves. If it needs doing, do it. And if you don't know how to do it, figure it out, because somebody else is going to have to figure it out. And that's really the environment that I grew up in. My father was a very high integrity guy. The other thing I didn't realize at the time, the environment that I grew up in, and my parents, why they chose that environment, very non-judgmental. I mean, I think bad attitudes, whether they be towards the world, other people, they're sort of taught in the home. I didn't realize, for example, ethnicity. I mean, there was no discussion whatsoever about other ethnic groups, other religions. I mean, we went to church. We had our religion, but it was never the expense of anybody else. There was never anything I learned that was at the expense of anybody else. So consequently, I didn't know that I was any different than anybody else. I look back at people I grew up with in high school. I now know there was a Hispanic kid. I had no idea he was Hispanic, because nobody talked about it. I now know that I went to school with a mixed race kid, black and white, as my son would say, because he's black and white. I didn't know. It was Roger. It was Steve. It was Victor. We didn't know. So it was growing up in Iowa, small town environment, blue collar environment, was a great place to grow up. Great place to grow up.
Awesome, man. What was your mom like?
Stay-at-home mom, sort of like classic stay-at-home mom, which meant if she got paid minimum wage for all the work that she did, nobody could ever have afforded her, because
right.
Stay-at-home mom, that's excuse me, that's a 24/7 day, and that with no days off. Minimum wage, double time, overtime, holiday pay. Stay-at-home moms don't get that. Stay-at-home mom took care of us. Nurtured us, grew us, taught us stuff. Many of the truisms, the sayings that I either picked them up from my dad or my mom. I mean, one of the voice in my head is my mom's voice. It's also in my son's head also, because he spent a lot of time with my folks growing up. One of our favorites, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I mean, that's, intentions without actions. My mom drilled that stuff into us. Morals, doing the right thing, all that stuff. Midwestern, be home in time. My mom had, if it was dinner time, she had a whistle. The whistle had this penetrating sound. Wherever we were in the neighborhood, you could hear it. You heard that whistle, it's time to get home. That was my mom.
Man, you just light up. when you talk about your family and your childhood. That's pretty cool. It sounds like there you go. Sounds like you had a really see, I'm such in the habit now. It's crazy.
Good
It's just
for
it's just second nature, but it does. It sounds like you had a really good upbringing, good experiences. It's rare. It doesn't happen to everybody. So that's great.
Yeah, and I somewhere I think I call it two lines of code, for lack of a better term. Everybody's got two lines of code. Is the computer code somewhere in our data bank. Somebody put two lines of code in us to kind of guide us for the rest of our lives. And ideally, those two lines of code, whatever they are, are optimistic. Like I never felt like there were any limitations on me. My mom said something to me, my dad said something to me. I don't know what it is. I get two lines of code in me that is like, work hard and figure it out, and you'd be shocked at what you could do. And if we don't like the two lines of code that are in our head, in today's day and age, if you want to seek out somebody that could help you go in there and rewrite that two lines of code, it's there. Those resources are there. This is one of them, but it's not the only one. We get turned on to a lot of great reading. I get Stephen Kotler's book over here for a reason. Stephen Kotler's stuff is phenomenal. I mean, you want to get better, go out and find a way to get better. And whatever your challenge is, to succeed with people, which is, I think, why you and I resonate so much together, because you were describing earlier the application of these ideas to your family life, and the successes you described are describing with your wife. Succeeding with your wife, succeeding with your kids, not at the expense of the people on the other side, and you gotta succeed with people.
I agree with that, especially being a husband. You want to fix everything. You want to just jump in and problem solve. You don't want to be that empathetic ear. Your work has really helped me to just follow a very distinct pattern. When my wife is talking, I really listen into keywords and things that she's saying, her body language, her emotions. And my response, she laughs about it now, but she also loves it. I start the next sentence, sounds like, feels like, looks like. And then I usually just insert whatever emotion that I think she's going through, and then empathize with her, because I truly do. I just didn't know how what that communication looked like. So now it's like, sounds like you're really frustrated, and I wholeheartedly understand, because being quarantined and COVID-19, and these kids are always here, and someone's always talking, and they need chocolate milk. And I literally think I would drive myself to absolute insanity. And instead of trying to fix a problem, I'll simply ask something like, what's the best way I can support you right now? What feels right? And sometimes she'll just give me the answer, be like, I'd really love to go for a run. Can I just go for a run? I'm like, yeah, get out of here. But it's so much better than what it used to be. It's like, well, you should do this and you should do that. I used to shit all over her, right?
The shitty world, right? You don't want to shit all over somebody.
Exactly. So that's really helped. And same thing with my kids. I use that same, tactical empathy with them. And it really, I think it just allows them to feel seen and heard. And what I've noticed, and we'll go through some skill sets here, because I obviously want to give the audience some serious value. But the mirroring, I hardly ever use the word why anymore, and I use those three words. Wow. And that, so if my kid comes home, is like, this homework's driving me crazy. I'm like, homework's driving you crazy? Instead of being like, why is it driving you crazy? Like, your life is perfect. All you have to worry about is homework, and that, so, right?
You don't got to pay the bills around here.
Yeah. In fact, turn your light off. The electric bill's too high. But what happens is I'll use that, like, homework's driving you crazy. And they'll just go into detail about like things that are going on. And I'm just like, love it, man. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's great. So if you don't mind, I'd love to dive into some skill sets and obviously share with the audience. The first one I want to talk about is always getting the person to know first. And I have spent years in sales, and what I can tell you, without a
who's that cool dude right there? I gotta know. Who that cool dude is.
This is Lawson. Lawson, do you want to say hi to Chris?
Lawson.
Dad.
Lawson, how are you, man?
Hey, Dad.
Yeah, say Lawson, you want to say hi to Chris?
Hi, Chris.
Hey, man, how you doing? What's going on today?
You want to tell him what's going on today?
Yeah.
What's going on today?
Good.
Yeah, good. All right, cool. It's fun having Dad around all the time, huh? Maybe. Maybe. I don't know.
Depends on how much trouble he's in.
Dad.
So,
Hey, Dad.
man, yeah, that's my 6-year-old. He keeps us on our toes. He's like the Chris Farley of the family. He's hilarious. He is an absolute comedian. So
That's awesome.
Thank you. So getting the person to know. And I think if anybody has a sales background or just human nature in general, we want people to say yes. But you teach no, which I never understood it. And after I read your book, like for the 17th time and started, using it all over the place, I've definitely found the advantage with that. But what's the human psychology around that?
Yeah, it's crazy what a difference that makes. All right. So there's this really bad advice out there that if you get somebody saying yes, that it creates a momentum and they got to keep saying yes. And then secretly underneath that is, on some of that advice, it says that each yes is a micro agreement, which acts as a tie down, so that as you tie them down, then you walk them to the big yes, the commitment yes, and they have to say yes because they've been saying it. It made them feel good to say yes. After all, because it feels good to hear yes, so it must feel good to say it, which is not true. But, you got them. The consistency, they have to say yes. I mean, there's all this really bad advice around it. And, before Never Split the Difference, I mean, the steadiest bestseller out there on negotiation was getting to yes, as if it was the holy grail, the ultimate goal. And it's not. I mean, it's just tie downs. First of all, that's such a violation of this idea called our autonomy. Now, we will die over our autonomy. The first time that I started getting out of this as an idea and understanding it, I ran across a book back in 2002 called Start With No by Jim Camp. Jim ultimately became a friend and collaborated with both him and all his sons in that business. And I remember looking at that, and I passed it on the bookcase in the airport. I'm like, what? Start with no? I thought you were supposed to start with yes. And I went and I looked at it, and I go, if this book has one idea in it that I like, I'm going to buy the book. And so, and he said, people will die to preserve their right to say no. They'll die for it because it's their autonomy. Because otherwise they feel like they've been coerced, like they've been taken hostage. And I remember thinking, like, this is a business book. We know this in hostage negotiation. There is not one single hostage negotiation skill, not one, where you're trying to get the other side to say yes. I mean, we utterly avoid it because it's a useless word. Are you going to let the hostages go? Yeah, sure I am. Yeah. That's just not true. It's a useless word. So when I saw that Camp had it, and his whole idea on Start With No was just make him feel free to say no. Let him know it's okay to say no. And he would start his negotiations out saying, you can say no at any time. Stop me whenever you want. He called it preserving the right to veto, someone protecting their autonomy. Said it was a human nature driver in all behavior, not just hostage. And so at some point in time, we were like, wow, what would happen if instead of letting them know it's okay to say no, what would happen if we got them to say no? Would it have the opposite effect? That would open them up. And that's when, and we decided to try it. You can have an idea, but you got to road test that baby. Data improves design. Find out what happens. And people started using it, and it started making massive differences. I mean, not tiny differences, significant differences in every outcome. And my company, the Black Swan method is a part of that is applying this emotionally intelligent advantage of what happens when somebody says no. They feel safe. They feel protected. They're ready to move forward with you. It's crazy.
Yeah, they feel in control. Like I remember your example in your book is like, so do you like a clean glass of water? Yes. I'm sure you like a clean glass of water as much as I do. Is that correct? You're like all these yeses, right? And you automatically are like, where's this going? Get me off this phone now. I feel trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the guy that stops you in the airport or on the street, and he's got a petition and it says, do you like clean water? And you go like, get away from me.
Right. I know what you're doing. I'm not going to yes you into this. So I get that. I've noticed that even so as a father, like with my kids, you know, they seem to, we're really big on choices in the family as far as like, would you like to do your homework now or in 15 minutes? You know, just things like that. You know, you want to brush your teeth now or commercial time. When we want to drop the hammer and be like, dude, clean your room right now. What I'll notice is I get a much better response, and not only do I get a better response, but then I get action on top of it. Is like, I've asked you to clean your room. Is there anything preventing you from doing it right now? And they'll be like, no, I can do it right now. So it's interesting. Or like, you know, do you have any objections doing your homework before dinner? That way we can all hang out as a family after dinner. Things like that getting even the kids to say no. It seems the response is better than what it used to be.
What's really cool about your perspective on that too is the critical issue is what sort of action do you get after agreement? And you pointed out that you get better action on top of it. And that's what everything is about.
Right.
You know, with your kids, get them to do their homework, whatever you're trying to get them to do, with everybody that you interact with. The real issue is what happens after you think you guys have some sort of agreement over what you're going to do. The action is critical. Without action, you know, the agreement is completely useless.
Because a lot of times I'll get, you know, if I ask the other way.
Excuse me, I'll mute myself momentarily. I apologize for blowing everybody's ears out. Let me fix this while I finish this.
Oh, no, you're good, man.
You know, people like me that have allergies in today's coronavirus pandemic, you know, like we might be sneezing at the dust in the air, and 1,000 people around us are running away in horror.
I know, right? It's like, wait a second, that guy's not wearing a mask, safety glasses, rubber gloves, and he sneezed. He obviously has it. So, you know, I want to share a story with you we'll do this later on with the one-liner email, because I've got a great story about that where I coached a guy to do this and he was terrified to do it. So we'll get to that in a moment. But I also want to talk about the 3 types of yeses since we're talking about the no, because you're right. The whole action of like, hey, is there anything preventing you from cleaning your room right now? No, there's not. And usually I see action that follows that. When I say, hey, can you clean your room? Like, and they're playing PlayStation. Yep. Go down there 15 minutes later. Hey, are you going to clean your room? Yeah. So there's like, right? You see what I'm saying? And, but because
they know that if they say yes to you, you'll go away.
Yeah, I'll go away. So can we go over the 3 types of yeses?
Yeah, perfect, man. Yeah, it's the commitment, confirmation, and counterfeit. And because of this whole yes momentum nonsense or momentum selling, we're so used to people trying to lure us into the commitment yes via confirmation. It's so overdone that the counterfeit yes is out there. I mean, the counterfeit yes is a currency of somebody either trying to pump us for information or, as a child might want, to get us to go away. You know, you get a lot of salespeople to go away. You get whatever counterpart is the annoying buzzing, bzz, 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 and they won't go away. Give them a counterfeit yes, you know, and they'll feel good because it's great to hear yes. And that's what people really miss in the dynamic, how much of a crackhead they are for yes, to realize what just happened. What just happened is the other guy made me go away. The other guy made me spill my guts. You know, give the counterfeit yes. before we really outlined the three kinds of yeses, I remember saying to a lot of business people, have you ever been given a yes only to find out later it was a no? And any business person that's been in business more than 6 minutes will go like, boy, I've been suckered by that a whole bunch of times. So yeah, the counterfeit yes, because of this yes momentum nonsense, the currency out there is a counterfeit yes. And it is just like counterfeit money. Just try and go and cash a counterfeit 20 in a bank. They're going to hand it right back to you. The counterfeit 100, they're going to hand that baby right back to you. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, that chapter on the three yeses and the no has added so much clarity in our life, especially in parenting, but also interacting with others as well. I would love for you to talk about tactical empathy, and if we could also insert why it's important to have a certain tonality in our voices, and just to share some insights on you. This skill set that I've learned from you and your books and masterclass, man, it is like near and dear to my heart, because not only do I feel the other person has connected with me and they feel comfortable with me, but it has, for me, if I'm going to use tactical empathy, I'm hanging on every word that person's saying. So I'm listening like more intently, and I'm listening for words and body language and all these other things. So it's actually made me a better listener by using tactical empathy.
Wow. Which is exactly, I mean, that's perfect. That's a perfect application of it. And it's a self-reinforcing skill. So all you got to do is get started on it. And then suddenly you're getting better. I mean, it's awesome. So your original question, what is this thing called love? What is this thing called tactical empathy? First of all, it's understanding what empathy really is to begin with. Empathy is just demonstrating an understanding. How do you demonstrate an understanding? You utter it, you speak it, you articulate it. You got to lay out. You don't say, I understand. That's not demonstrating anything. That's actually giving words to what you believe the other side's perspective is. What is their point of view? Showing the words to understand. That's empathy to begin with. It's not sympathy and it's not agreement. I could say, you feel like I'm a jerk. I didn't agree that you felt that way. I didn't say it was accurate. I didn't admit to anything. I simply demonstrated an understanding of your observation, your perspective in the moment. You feel like I'm trying to take advantage of you. You feel like I'm not listening. Whatever it might be. What's in your gut instinct that you're worried that you would want to say to them but deny it instead. The 2 millimeter shift is from the denial to the observation. If you want to say, I don't want you to think I'm a jerk. I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of you. You should instead say, you probably feel like I'm a jerk. Probably feels like I'm taking advantage of you. That's a 2 millimeter shift from denial, which is bad, to just empathy. And we put the word tactical in front of it because today we have neuroscience that backs this up. We've really progressed beyond psychology to neuroscience. We can watch the chemical reactions. And we know from neuroscience that if you're harboring a negative thought and the thought just gets openly addressed, the elephant in the room, don't treat it like Voldemort. He should not be named. We don't want to act like this is Voldemort here, right? We do want to act like it's the elephant in the room. You don't get rid of the elephant in the room by either denying that it's there or pretending it's not there. You get rid of the elephant in the room by saying like, yeah, there's an elephant in the room. There it is right there. And as a matter of fact, you're even more effective against the elephant in the room by saying like, that's a horrible elephant. I mean, that elephant, you probably feel like that elephant's going to squash you, that there isn't any room for you, that you can't breathe. And if I overemphasize the fearsome nature of the elephant, instead of you going like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and losing control, your reaction is going to actually be the opposite. You're going to be like, all right, it ain't that bad. Yeah, it's there. But as a matter of fact, now that you talk about how bad it is, I got to tell you something. I'm not the least bit intimidated by that elephant. I mean, that's really the way in reality that it goes. And so let's take advantage of what we learned. Let's be willing to be smarter today than we were yesterday. Let's be willing to learn that calling out negatives, even proactively, is a ridiculously effective way to communicate with people.
I've known that, I've seen that to be really useful as well, especially if I'm going to talk to my wife about something. Like I'll use that elephant in the room tactic. And what I notice is if I go to my wife and I say, "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" And she's like, like she gets that look, right?
Guards up.
Guards up.
Like this, back,
right.
aiming back.
But when I say something like, "Hey, I want to share something with you," and you're going to think I am absolutely insane. And when I pose it like that, now because I've tested this, she'll look at me with curiosity, like, "What are you going to say?" Versus like, "What do we need to talk about? What's going to happen?" Like there's that uncertainty. Yeah.
It triggers a curiosity.
Yeah.
Here's what's really cool about your observation of that dynamic. See, genuine curiosity is actually a highly positive state of mind. It's when people are telling us, "I need a hack. How do I keep from getting upset? How do I do a better job listening?" And the short answer is like, be curious. Curiosity, in point of fact, is a highly positive state of mind. You can take in more information. You can't be curious and angry at the same time. It's actually not possible. Genuinely curious. And curiosity has a tendency to crowd out anger in a really interesting way. And that's the first time I've heard somebody point out that dynamic of the triggering of curiosity on the other side. That's really interesting. I mean, that's a powerful, it's a powerful skill, tool, dynamic to bring to bear in a conversation. It really aids you in so many ways. It's cool.
It really does. It sort of sets the stage for a more fruitful conversation versus like, we need to talk about something serious,
And I'm going to back up a little bit too, because you talked to me about tone of voice.
Yeah.
And your tone of voice is phenomenal. I mean,
thank you.
You got a great combination of a downward inflecting supportive voice. And just the way that you posed, you did the example of the way you posed it to your wife is actually a rep. I mean, that's the way you would want to perfectly say it. The way you said it isn't accusatory. It's almost playful.
Mm-hmm.
And and that brings in another positive element, because it's not emotions that are bad for our performance and our decision making. It's negative emotions. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of this guy over here, Stephen Kotler, he's one of the world's leading experts on the mind state of flow. And flow is you at your top level of performance. And I've learned a lot about flow and applying flow in business. And he says flow is a highly positive state of mind. Highly positive. You're smarter. And there's a number of other data sources to prove that you're smarter in a positive frame of mind. You can take in more information. Your pattern recognition increases. Your endurance. All those things increase in a highly positive state of mind. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people that are telling us to gamify something. Gamify an effort, and suddenly you find yourself, you get better at it faster. I mean, this is all a positive frame of mind. And you can trigger that in somebody else based on your tone of voice. And your tone of voice, especially when you were given that example of posing something to your wife, borderlined on playful, which then it's going to be contagious and it's going to work. It's going to work for both of you and to both of you's advantage, not just to your advantage, but also to your counterparts as well. So, I mean, that stuff's cool. I could go on forever about this, right?
I love it, man. Thank you. You literally just made my whole week, I think, just by sharing that. Thank you very much. So we've gone over voice tone, we've gone over the no, we've gone over tactical empathy. The other really cool thing too, since our platform and our community, we have married men mostly, for the most part, that come and do life with us. And a lot of the things that we help men with is communication. And when we talk about tactical empathy, some guys, and I'm sure you've gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, some guys will be like, Well, if I'm empathetic, that means I agree with her. No matter how crazy it is, it's like I'm agreeing with it. And we're like, no. Like it actually isn't. If you read the book, Never Split the Difference, empathy is not agreement. It's you're in the trenches. You're connecting with that person. You're feeling what they're feeling, but you don't agree with them. And you have a great example in your book about how you've had to deal with terrorists and hostage situations, and their reasoning behind taking someone hostage for ransom makes total sense to them, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's the critical issue to really unleash your empathy superpowers, your emotional intelligence superpowers, your tactical empathy superpower. Separate empathy from agreement, and you have started to unleash it. And another example, I mean, had a terrorism trial in New York City, had way back when, late mid 90s. Terrorists, badass terrorists in civilian court, convicted them all. Which means, first of all, you can do a terrorism trial in an open civilian court. But the majority of our witnesses were Muslims who voluntarily testified. We had no hammer on them, no coercion, no leverage. Negotiated their voluntary testimony against a Muslim cleric. Just because you're a cleric doesn't mean you won't commit a crime. And this guy committed a lot of crimes. How do you get a member of a religion to voluntarily testify against one of the leaders in that religion who has been a criminal? Every one of them I'd sit down with and I'd say, you believe that there's been a succession of American governments for the last 200 years that have been anti-Islamic. And every one of them would go, yeah. And that would be the first step to that negotiation. I never said that I agreed or that it was fair or that it was accurate. I just said, you believe, and I said it like I wasn't afraid of it, Here's your truth. You can't handle the truth. I can handle your truth. I can handle your truth so well that I'm not afraid to speak it out loud because I feel so insecure in my position that suddenly I got to give in. We didn't give in to any of those guys, not one of them. And they all voluntarily testified, and none of them regretted it. As a matter of fact, almost to a person, they came up to us afterwards and congratulated us on our integrity, which is where you want to be in every negotiation. Don't be afraid of how they see things. And leave them in a position that when it's all said and done, no matter how it came out, they are impressed with your integrity. Mm-hmm. That's where you want to be with everybody, spouse, child, colleague, but especially with a spouse, because your spouse wants integrity from you. They're not looking for understanding, or they're not looking for agreement. They're looking for understanding, and they're looking for you to maintain your integrity and understanding those fine lines, because then they know that you are always going to be there for them.
Yeah, I think it really provides just this safe environment for them, right? Where they could say things and that man is going to stand strong, be there in the trenches with them, whatever it is that they're feeling, but also not get the feathers ruffled because of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You were going to say that's right, weren't you?
That's right.
That's right.
Amen.
Amen. So I love that. So I want to ask you a question about the thing that I've struggled with the most is, and I don't know what I'm missing. Maybe I need to go back and read the book again. But I'm really struggling with that's right. And there's a distinct difference between, and I actually saw this unfold on a coaching call that I had with a client. And we were going back and forth, and I wanted to get him to the point where he was saying, that's right. And unfortunately, he kept saying, you're right. You're right. And I could tell, because I've read your book, I was like, he's not buying this.
Right.
And it was an observation about him, and what he was going through. And he kept saying, yep, you're right. You're right. And I could tell he was, you're writing me just to hear, just so he was telling me what I want to hear. And I literally
stop.
I did. I stopped. I actually,
but he's telling you that, so you will stop, right? I mean,
right.
You can tell he's trying to get you to shut up.
Right. So I tested something. It was probably the wrong thing to do. I was like, well, am I right or is that right? And he's like, what? So anyway, it's one skill set that I've had just a really hard time with is understanding that's right versus you're right. I understand it, but I don't know how to get the person to that's right.
It's interesting because that's a tough one. Getting people from their to bridge the gap from being able to label and mirror to the other side to get a that's right. That's a bit of a leap in skill level, and it's hard. A lot of people struggle with that. We see that on a consistent and regular basis. How much? So your initial question: somebody saying you're right to you, they're not bought in. To some degree, either a little or to the point where they just want you to shut up. They're not bought in. Because when they say you're right, they're putting some distance between themselves and what was just said. When somebody says that's right, they've embraced it completely. In many cases, what you've actually done is you've triggered an epiphany on the other side. It was an observation from Tal Raz, our co-author. The book is really me, my son Brandon, and Tal collaborating. Brandon didn't get his name on a book. A mistake that I will regret to this day. That publishers signed a deal with me. Brandon helped write the book. And
Brandon's your son, right?
Brandon's my son. Brandon's a superstar negotiator, runs my company, cuts phenomenal deals. He's so good at it now. He's training people we're bringing on. But making that leap from you're right to that's right. Tal said, when somebody says that's right, you trigger an epiphany on the other side. What happens when you trigger an epiphany? There's a neurochemical response among the chemicals that get dumped into your system when anybody says that's right. When they experience an epiphany, is oxytocin, which is the bonding drug, which is why you want to get a that's right out of somebody, because you want them to feel bonded to you. You want to trigger the empathy response from the other side towards you. And it's actually a chemical reaction. And you get a you're right when you're expressing an opinion that you probably believe to be true. You probably believe to be accurate. You're making a value proposition. You're making an argument. You're trying to get somebody to see something by laying it out to them. You get a that's right when you fully express their point of view, particularly the negatives. We talked about the negatives before. The negatives are an essential element, probably having to do with you. If you're getting you're right versus a that's right, you probably need to put some bad mouthing of you in there. There's something about you that's making them feel defensive, that's making them put this you're right shield up to keep a distance between the two of you. And if they're doing that, there's something about you that's triggering their defense mechanisms. That's right is worth its weight in gold, which makes it worth struggling for and keeping it as an objective, because it is a game-changing moment when you get a that's right out of the other side.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is I can understand now. Just you saying that's a leap in skill set. I can definitely understand that, because that's been the hardest one without a doubt.
Well, when I'm practicing it myself, because it takes practice. I mean, I'll back in the days when we were taking lifts, which will come back, but nobody's taking a lift anyway, because the lift driver doesn't want to risk getting the virus from you. But I would work on getting the that's right out of a lift driver, and if I was out of practice, then I wasn't able to draw it out of them. I mean, it takes practice. It's worth the effort. It's worth the effort.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely understand it a little bit better now that you've explained, especially the epiphany and the you said oxycodone, is that right?
Oxytocin.
I'm thinking of drugs.
It is a drug. It's just a natural drug,
right? But I didn't know it was upon that level. That's how deep it went. But that added a lot of clarity to it. I want to share a quick story with you before we wrap up here. And I want to make sure also the men can get to your resources and they enjoy it as much as I have over the past couple of years, because it's been a game changer. So I had a good friend of mine who was working on a very big deal for a hospital. He was medical sales rep and was working on a big deal. And he was right at the cusp of getting approval to bring this product in for evaluation, yada, yada, yada. And he just couldn't get the OR director to reply to any emails. Hey, Ruth, hope you're well, blah, blah, blah. Just want to circle back around. Just want to see how everything was going. I just want to see where we're at, blah, blah. Falling on deaf ears. He was sharing this over lunch. And I said, I've got a tactic that I've learned from a book that I read. Yeah, I thoroughly believe in the person who did it because he was hostage negotiator for the FBI, and I've had him on the show. I was like, write her an email and just simply say, hey, Ruth, is it your intention to not move forward with this project? That's it. That's all you put. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, there's no way I'm doing that. Like she's gonna blow up. She's gonna think I'm nuts. And I'm like, give me your phone and I'll do it. And he's like, so he's like, dude, if this blows up in my face, like I'm gonna kill you. Yeah, I'm gonna kill you. I was like, I think it'll work. So we had a bet that I was like, if she doesn't get back to you by the end of lunch, I'll buy your lunch and whatever premium liquor you want, I'll get you your favorite bottle of it, to drown your sorrows that you didn't get the deal. So he's like, okay. He's like, all right. So we sent her this. 8.5 minutes later, she replies, no, it's fine. We're actually in the midst right now. We're getting it approved. We're going to bring you in next Wednesday. Everything's all good. We're going to move forward next Wednesday. And he was like, whoa, dude, that was crazy. Like, he's like, I literally thought she was going to fly off the handle. It was one sentence long. So I wanted to share that with you. That was gold.
That's really cool. And the cool thing about it is, like, people are so horrified.
Yeah.
And you got so interesting, lunch and premium liquor. Yeah.
Premium liquor. Yeah.
If you start betting premium liquor with me, I'm envisioning drinking that stuff. So I'm going to take that bet. And you got a sucker move. And she got back in 8.5 minutes.
8.5 minutes.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it was good. But can you just share what the psychology is behind the one sentence email?
Yeah. Well, it's you triggering a no response, however you craft it. People feel safe and protected when they say no. You need that baby to go out all by itself. That was the other thing that you got to do. You can't, I coached a guy one time on no-oriented questions, and he put them all in an email, and every no-oriented question he asked, he immediately followed up with, because I haven't, I'm like, oh God, he just destroyed everything. So it's got to go out by itself. This is a surgical strike, and you got to let that baby hit. So first of all, the no makes them feel safe and protected. Number two, by saying no, they're avoiding a loss. And loss avoidance is the primary driver in human decision making. Now, she looks at this, if you decided not to move forward, then suddenly the future is without this, which is a loss. And it's a way to say no to trigger loss avoidance. Another psychological neuroscience element, she's rescuing the sender. She gets to, this saying no not only made her feel safe and protected, it made us feel empowered because somebody on the other side needed rescuing and correcting. It works on all these levels, and somebody gets a dose of all these hit after hit after hit. As soon as they contemplate the no reaction, 8.5 minutes. I apologize you guys had to wait that long. She probably was in a bathroom when you originally sent the text or the email, because she probably actually responded in a minute as soon as she saw it. So she was away from her phone. I'm sorry it took that long.
It was lunchtime. So.
Right. Some got in the way.
Right. No, I love that, man. I love the skill sets. I think I shared with you, I've read your book. I not only have the hard copy, but I also have the audio. And then I joined Masterclass just for you, because I just thoroughly, and I've been a member of Masterclass now for, I think 120 days, and I have watched your course 4 times, and I haven't watched anybody else's. I know there's a plethora of things out there, but that's like the only reason I joined. But I want to make sure that the men can find all your resources, what you're working on, and what you're excited about. So share with us how we can find you.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you talked about that masterclass because, and it is the real masterclass. There's a whole bunch of people out there that say, do this masterclass, do that masterclass. The masterclass is a standalone operation. They got a lot of ads in social media. It's Martin Scorsese, Samuel Jackson, Serena Williams, Gordon Ramsay. The masterclass that those guys are on. It's an insanely well-produced negotiation instruction. I'm so proud of collaborating with these people in so many ways, and it's a ridiculously cheap value. It has to be the most inexpensive, best value for a dollar out there, because you get my course is the most viewed course on their site in last month.
I can see that.
Competing with everybody else, number one. Number two, all the good dads out there, turn your wife on to this too. As it turns out, it skews heavily also towards women. Women want to learn how to be better negotiators. You want your wife learning this stuff. You want her understanding where you're coming from every much as she wants you to understand where she's coming from. This is a two-way street. And tell her that women love it because it's the truth. It's especially now, it's the best value out there. There's nothing that compares in terms of its value. And then there's this great entertaining stuff. You got to see Ron Howard. You got to see Martin Scorsese. You got to see Samuel Jackson. I mean, pick somebody famous that you're into. They've probably got a master class. It's worth it. And I suppose I'm so enthusiastic about it. Like I never thought I was going to be in the same places as the people that I just mentioned, which might be a sign of the apocalypse. Kid from Iowa like me. But get the masterclass. It'll be the best money you ever spent, the cheapest money you ever spent on making your life better. Then follow up, subscribe to our newsletter. Actionable, concise, free, comes out on Tuesday mornings. Actionable and concise are the key issues because not everybody has time to go through a newsletter that has 50 articles and it's got one article. You can drop stuff in, you can start to use right now. Easiest way to sign up for the newsletter, text the message, Black Swan Method. Lowercase, spaces between them, Black Swan Method. Send that as a text to 33777. 33777, 33777, just like the airplane. You send that message as I've outlined it to that number. You'll get a dialog box back asking for your email. Sign up. You get the book, the masterclass separately, and the email. You got the tools that you need to navigate staying at home all day long with your kids without wanting to jump off the roof.
You hit the nail on the head there, my friend, for sure. Chris, this has been a pleasure. Round 2. Actually, it's kind of round 3 because not only did you come on the podcast the first time, but you also dropped by our mastermind community and you did a Q&A a while back that we recorded, and now this is round 3. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the skills. And the one thing that I want to share with this is I again acknowledge and appreciate you for these skills, because the thing that I was in sales for 20 years before this, and I always felt there was that part of the sales training that made me feel disingenuous, non-authentic. The thing that I really love about your book is it feels very authentic because it gives you the human psychology behind communication. Like I almost think your book should be titled Masters of Communication, something to do with psychology, just because yes, it's negotiation, but profound communication and really being it not only it has made me a better communicator, but it's made me a way better listener and more empathetic towards people that mean most to me. So thank you.
That's cool, man. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Thanks,
you bet.
man. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.